just quickly get the other panelists onto the stage. I would invite Sharan Chatterjee. He's an investor and advisor. He's the ex-vice president for product management at Flipkart. Next up, Hiren Chandiramani, director of product management for EISG at Cisco. I would request Chitra Ravi, founder and CEO of Easy Vidya, to come. She's an education thought leader, and she is looking at bringing technology into education space. So last but not the least, we'd like to have Julian Phillip on the dais. He's an IoT strategist. He's covering IoT and wearables from the India market space. He also founded Mobile Perspectives. Julian. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, to agree to be on the panel. The topic of the discussion for today is building next-gen products for the Indian consumer. As a preamble, what I would like to do is to just basically point out two pertinent factors around which the whole discussion today is going to be based. First is the shaping up of the urban middle-class Indian consumer, who's expected to have a consumption of over 13 trillion US dollars per year by 2030, which is going at a rapid pace. And on the other side, we have a huge uptake of mobiles and other devices in the Indian market space. 5 years ago or 3 years ago, if somebody would have told me or asked me about what is the context between technology and taxi drivers in India, we would not be imagining the current scenario where a taxi driver is able to very seamlessly switch between Ola device to a Uber device and switch between and optimize his trips and all of that stuff. So the pace at which the market is changing is very rapid, and I think it's important for all of us in the tech space and the services space to really understand what it really means to think and imagine products for the new Indian consumer, right? So with that, I would open up the discussion, starting with Sharan, maybe. So firstly, I think you have been at Flipkart, and it's an amazing story, needless to say. But I think there is this whole discussion about, is the Indian consumer market really there in terms of warranting a huge technological product investment into it, or is it just a little bit of wishful thinking? I'll ask Sharan to start off, and then maybe the others to just pitch in the conversation. Sharan.
Okay, so my take is the market is huge. It's already there. It's just that we're not yet sort of built the right set of products. There's a massive opportunity. If I just go back at some of the numbers, just speaking from pure experience, at Flipkart you would get like close to 120 million unique users coming on a yearly basis, which pretty much close to the size of the entire internet population of India. Of which about on a yearly basis, close to 25-30 million people would come transact, which is again, not an insignificant number. And these are dated. So more recent, obviously a lot more. So with a market which already has, say about 150 million users who have access to internet in some form or shape, give or take, and where the number of people who are actually getting accustomed to sort of consuming digital services online is increasing by the day. My estimate right now is probably close to 35-40 million across all of these varied forms of digital services. That's already a pretty sizable chunk of consumers that are sort of seeking their consumption patterns to get better, more efficient, and such, right? So as a result of which, obviously the future from here bodes even better in terms of the total number of internet population and the number who are going to be transacting on these digital services. So I think we are off to a great start. You're seeing a lot of verticals where people are actually trying to solve interesting problems through technology, through operations. And market is absolutely there. It's only going to get bigger. And I think just focusing on this market enough is going to sort of result in sizable opportunity for any enterprise, essentially.
I would flip the argument a little bit to Hiren here, who's from Cisco, who's actually looked at this whole space from a global MNC point of view as opposed to a startup side. So Hiren.
Yeah, so I think when you look in, say, technology market, I think it's a very, very broad space. and you can segment it into different sort of verticals. When you're talking about the internet and online commerce or service market, I would 100% agree with Sharon, right? There's no doubt about it. I think I was just reading that we have a 25% penetration of internet access and a user about 200 and 250 million internet users. Imagine if that became 50% penetration, which it will, right, in 5, 10 years. So there's no doubt about that, that on the consumer internet access, we're growing. And services such as e-commerce, food delivery, taxis, et cetera, there's a huge market. Any company can focus on India and make a huge revenue. But then if you look at some other segments, if you look at a very traditional company like Cisco, which is not really a B2C, but a B2B, right? There, too, there is an opportunity. In fact, at Cisco, we have created a couple of products where we looked at India as a market, and we said there is a business case, and we sort of came out with a couple of products. But what we found that over time, those same products are very relevant to other emerging countries, like LATAM, ASEAN, and surprisingly, in one case, even to Japan, which is a developed country. And so we have expanded our go-to-market target and the geos we ship in. And the lesson we learned is that while India is a very interesting market, there are a lot of lessons to be learned in India, but those same lessons are applicable to other markets also in LATAM. So Cisco, we are now looking at India as a development center, just not for India, but also for the emerging countries worldwide. And we're now looking at products that we can develop from India for the entire emerging country. Okay, so that's another way to look at that. I think you can use India as a base to grow out. The third potential vertical, I would say, would be in the consumer space, things like camera, cell phones, et cetera. And it's there that today I see the biggest challenge. I don't know of any other Indian company today that actually is successful in that space. And there are many reasons for it, right? None the least is that you have these big brands, Samsung included, LG, Sony, all here today, competing for the same TAM. And how do you actually successfully build a brand in the Indian market for the Indian consumer while being successfully competing against these big brands?
I think that brings us to an interesting place where I would like to bring in Julian into the discussion here. Julian has been looking at IoT space from India point of view and what has been happening in the IoT and wearable side in the India market. So his discussion about the third segment of devices and other stuff. So what is your take on that, Julian?
So in terms of the market, India as a market, I think I'm an eternal optimist, and because I'm coming from the mobile space, I definitely think India is a large enough market. I mean, there are very big success stories like Flipkart, but we have over 150 million smartphones. We have more than 250 million mobile internet users. We are adding internet users at the fastest pace anywhere in the world. So in terms of the infrastructure, I think we have a very strong market. If you look at distribution, reaching this audience through app stores or another big success in India, Facebook, right? You have the ability to reach at least 150 million users, close to 90% of them on mobile. So distribution also exists. If you look at problems, India has a lot of problems yet to be solved. There are major problems in healthcare, in education, in delivery of services. So there are many problems that need to be solved. So overall, I'm very strongly believe India is a fantastic market to be in. I think as developers, as folks who are looking to building the next generation of products, India is a fantastic opportunity for all of you. Specifically with respect to IoT and wearables, in fact, my contention is that we have an opportunity to actually go out and compete with the rest of the world. Recently, talked to a few entrepreneurs in the IoT space, and we have some fantastic products, IoT products. And what's unique about, I think, the Indian IoT scene is they're tying it very well with the services industry. So you have a wearable device, which is a pendant for elder care. So this is a device that would, you press in case you have an emergency, and that's connected to a back-end healthcare system. So there's that device, IoT device, but there's also a whole healthcare service attached to it. There's a product called Car IQ, which connects to your car and tells you all information about your car, but then again connects to a service industry of the automotive servicing, insurance, all of those. So I think we are seeing a lot of entrepreneurs starting up businesses in the IoT wearable space, connected to mobile, the mobile part, and I think the OS and the applications you can build on this are very crucial to making all of those success. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity.
What I hear you saying is that there needs to be a greater amount of orchestration between the wearables and IoT and the service side. Yeah. Hiren, you wanted to add?
No, I just want to support what you were saying, right? Which is there's a tremendous opportunity. I don't think anybody will deny that. But also the other point which you hit, right? We have an opportunity to go global. I don't think as technology companies in India, whether we are talking about wearables or anything else, we should just limit ourselves to India. You may start off in India, but I think there's a tremendous opportunity today where we have the talent and we have the technology to actually go global. And that's something you were saying which I would like to support on that.
I would like to swing the discussion to an entirely different space. So while Sharan with Flipkart and Hiren with Cisco and Julian with IoT and all is completely technology native or digital native histories, I would bring in Chitra into the discussion here. So Chitra is coming from an education company. She's an education thought leader, and their organization has literally been a non-digital native, right? And in the recent past, they are looking at how to embrace technology. So Chitra, what are your thoughts in this whole space?
I can see I'm kind of a black sheep here.
No, we are the black sheep, you're the white sheep.
Yeah, so basically, I mean, if you look at the segment I'm in, which is education, you would, from outside, it seems very different. It seems like most, I don't know how many developers here are focusing on technology as well. I see a startup every day that sees a lot of light and a lot of opportunities in technology, in education space. But inside, when you are literally working with the schools, you see there's a huge dichotomy. I'm in the B2B segment, yet, because we are still dealing with the consumers, the decision makers being the school owners or the leaders. And what we see is, while the end consumer, which is the student, are much ahead as consumers of technology, the people who decide, which is the 40+ principals or the school owners or even the teachers who are going to use it, are absolutely on the other end of the curve itself. So there is a huge dichotomy, and there is also this dichotomy of how much technology is actually going to help learning improve, which is what my kind of organizations are in the pursuit of. So there's enough chaos within. But we do see, and that's why, like Banu said, we have recently gone on to adapt app and technology in a big way. We do see that many problems that are ailing this space currently, technology can help us to solve that problem. So we should be naturally leveraging on technology. Having said that, I just want to say that there's another huge complexity here in terms of the infrastructure, which is different from a B2C scenario, where the school would not really throw up enough infrastructure themselves or the bandwidth, etc., that is prohibiting the leveraging in its fullest extent. So that's another complexity. Very interesting space to be in, trying to see the opportunities vis-a-vis the problems that surround this. So that way, I think opportunities are tremendous, but how fast we can get to cracking the real problems that's ailing education is yet to be seen.
So it's interesting that you bring about this whole discussion about the decision makers being a little different in yours, particularly in your space, from the people who are actually using it, who might be the kids and all. So can you narrate your experiences of how differently you see the kids responding to what you're doing?
So in the last 1 month, we've launched a new product with which about hundreds of schools in our ecosystem have adapted. And so this is a new app that we have released that helps students learn better, and the app helps teachers and parents assess students better. So when we launched this product, the schools provided the license keys to the students, and in the next 1 week, our service center had calls from 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, and none of the teachers and the parents would call to say, so where do we download it? But children would call to say, in fact, I happened to pick up a call from a 9-year-old, grade 4 child, and she says, I want my password right now, I want to work on this app. And I told her, just, email me your details, we'll see what we can do about it. The second minute she calls me back again and says, where is my password? I already sent you the email. So this is the kind of traction we see among kids, their enthusiasm, their knowledge, their intuitiveness to use such a technology product, but there is no push or there is no support from the other side, which is the teachers. In fact, our worry now is, will they even dissuade this consumer base from using it? Because every other day a parent calls and says, oh, do you think they should be using these kind of technology products? Shouldn't they be sitting with books? And then we have to really tell them what it means in terms of true learning. So I see a huge dichotomy, and it's very interesting if you take the financial implications out of it.
I think that's very telling of how many different types of customers we have in the Indian market. It only gets complicated. So I think the discussion then needs to go a little bit forward into the next segment. What I would like to really bring forward is, clearly enough, there is enormous opportunity in India. It could be a great test bed to create products which can purely survive on an Indian business case, as well as have opportunities to scale up to a global business case. The next question obviously is that, do we have enough talent and capacity in the ecosystem to be able to really build these products? And how do the panelists feel about it? Maybe we can start with Hiren.
I think it's a mixed bag out there. I think I've seen a lot of change over the last 5-7 years, where you've got a host of product managers come into both startups as well as established companies like Cisco. That skill set wasn't there 5-10 years ago. Over the last 5-10 years, I've seen that skill set being developed, people being trained, and that product mindset coming in there. I think where it's missing is in the larger developer community, right? We have a lot of great ideas, and we can take a good stab at solving those great ideas. But how do you actually, in an organization that is big, and I'll use Cisco as an example again, which is 5,000 engineers, put in that product mindset, that innovation, that thought about how my customer is going to use my product. Am I developing it to solve a customer problem, or am I just meeting the spec, right? That has been outlined in the PRD. And I think that part where we call the customer centricity, that part is still missing. And we need to sort of instill that development, that product leadership mindset, the product thinking into our development community in all companies, I think. There are always a couple of people who are the thought leaders, they're the product leaders, but we cannot rely on them to drive the company to the next stage. I think it has to be pervasive throughout the company.
I think I'll brave to juxtapose the Cisco context with Flipkart context. And what do you have to feel about this?
Yeah, so I came back to India, about 3.5 years back to work for Flipkart. And my sort of, what I've seen then versus what I see now is, not necessarily talking about product managers, but there were some really sharp engineers who, or in some cases, business folks who were like so-called the category leaders, who actually, they were like, they had the basics in place, meaning they were good problem solvers, they were good structured thinkers. They normally thought about customers, like what are they trying to sort of, what are their challenges, what are their problems, where are they struggling. So I found a lot of people who had sort of these basic elements in place. What was lacking from my standpoint was somebody who could sort of connect all of those and just think about that same thing but a little bit more deeply. Like for instance, if you were a good problem solver, if you were a good structured thinker, if you were a good top-down thinker, and you were thinking about the needs of the customer, needs and the problems of the customer, all of these tied together, unfortunately, the definition of that is the product manager. and more. What I felt was that there were not enough people kind of thinking about that in a more sort of connected, coherent way. When we started sort of, pointing out that, hey, listen, could you be thinking about it this way, that way, all of that, I'm seeing that, this market obviously is maturing. So I think we have still some ways to go. There are some good signs, and we were talking about this right before our panel, where, what we are finding is a lot of people are actually able to identify these new problems, right? I mean, that's why you're seeing so many interesting startups out there who are able to identify the problem to solve for the customer and who are actually taking a view to solving that problem. The question is sort of going that 1, 2, 3 level deeper in trying to solve it in a way where, as we say, right, to make that product stick, right, where the customer really loves it and the customer starts actually pulling it, right, as opposed to you trying to push it constantly through n number of marketing tactics. I think that discipline, that approach to where the product kind of sells itself, it's so simple, so intuitive, really solving it from the principles of really appealing to the customer and the customer pulling it. I think that is, to me, that next level or that next step and the reason I'm hopeful is because, one, there is good ecosystem support. I think when 3.5 years back, there was no appreciation for product managers, honestly. At Flipkart, I mean, part of my job was to evangelize what a product manager does and then hire for them. But now I see a lot of awareness where people are recognizing the need for like talent. Doesn't necessarily have to be product managers per se, but somebody who can sort of think of it deeply enough, connect the dots, paint that whole story, and really make something that is truly delightful and intuitive from a customer standpoint, whether it's an end customer or an enterprise or whoever. So I think, yes, I think we're off to a good start. We're seeing good signs, but I think we'll have to take that next step in terms of really kind of building some of those products. We need to see more of products that stick.
Correct.
We're seeing a few examples, but I think we're just not seeing enough of them.
Right, and I sort of agree with you, right? It should not be the job of the product manager only.
No, not at all.
Right, the product manager is the initial person who will define it and talk about the customer use case, business outcome, etc. But then it becomes a job of every developer to be their own product lead designer, whatever you may call it, and that developer has to think about how the customer is going to use it and develop it in such a way which, to your point, is sticky, compelling, and causes a pull from the customer, right? But I think that's where the challenge lies. When you're growing the company, how do you scale up?
And I think that brings me to point to Julian. This whole dichotomy about wearable and IoT in itself not being enough, but needing to plug into a larger service offering. How do you see that whole thing playing up?
Yeah. So I think just taking a step back before I answer your question specifically, I'm constantly amazed. At the tenacity, at the ideas that startups that we meet. I'm sure there are quite a few here in the audience today who have got one idea already going on in your mind and saying, okay, I'm going to start a company one day. And as Sharan was saying, we are very good at identifying a problem. And in fact, we are very good at identifying an opportunity and saying, hey, I think I can make some money in this. But where I think we need to spend a lot more time is what is the solution we are offering to make that problem, to solve that problem, or to go after the opportunity. I think that space, a little bit of deeper thought needs to go, because obviously you need to factor in a lot more things about, if you want to make a product that survives time. For example, Flipkart, didn't take off on day one or year one. They had to survive a lot of time making, so many different stages of their company. So you need to survive time. You need to have enough users. So you need to have a really sticky product to the point. So, and I think in the what I've noticed in the IoT space, this is a good trend that these products are doing, is they're leveraging the strength of the Indian services industry. So as you all know, we have a very strong services culture. Culturally, we are very strong in services. We're very good at organizing ourselves to provide services. And the products that are being launched now are tying into that services. So there is a technology part, There is a IoT product, which is, you know, a wearable, or it's something that plugs into a car or your computer, or a system, a sensor in your system that's connected to a service, the mobile phone app, which all of us have, and then of course connected to the services. So I think looking at it from how will consumers use it? Like, for example, I gave you the example of the elder care. Now the problem they were trying to solve is, you have this parent, you have these kids who are not living with their parents, which is a context that we all know is happening in India. People are moving away to the cities so they are away from their parents. So they need to keep in touch with their parents. How are they going to keep in touch with their parents? So let's give them some device to, you know, wear on them, and that will let us know if anything happens to them. But that's not good enough. You got to connect that to service providers. Okay, how is that? What happens if they fall down? Okay, there needs to be an emergency response system. Okay, let's go talk to the service providers who can provide that. They do not have the ability to obviously provide everything in the pictures. They connect with other service providers. So what about insurance? What about, you know, getting reports done? So these are all different things that if you want to have a product, you need to think about, connect, bring together, and not just look at it as a small slice problem. Hope that.
Yeah.
So
I'll give a quick example. You know, just came to me. You know, the point I was also trying to make was, you know, I advise a lot of startups, and I was just asking one of the engineers that, you know, where is most of your time going? And this is a startup which is resource constrained and essentially trying to, I won't say survive, they've raised money, but, you know, they're obviously on the clock, right? They're trying to ensure that the product kind of really goes and kind of really picks up. So I asked the engineer, where is your time most spent? And he says, I'm doing all of this N things. And I said, do you understand what you've built, how that is being used? And is it being used, meaning if you've spent like N number of man hours, your team, building something, is it being used to the same, I mean, is it being used commensurately, right, for the effort that has been put in? And there were two responses I got. One, I have no idea. Second, I know, but, you know, not all of the things are being used. Now imagine that response in a world where you're resource constrained, where every minute, hour counts in terms of what you're building, where you have to prioritize ferociously and ensure that whatever you're building essentially is the right thing at that point of time for the customer. And if you're hearing statements like, I don't know, or not being used as much as I thought it would, to me that's a problem, right? So that this company that we're talking about didn't have a product manager. So somebody here in this case, either the business or the CEO or somebody was making that decision in terms of what needs to be built. But it tells you that whoever is deciding what needs to be built has obviously not sort of, you know, paid attention to the real needs of the customer, because what they have built isn't necessarily getting used. And they've spent a lot of time building that. So classic example, and to me that was like, wow. Like, you know, you're trying to survive, you're trying to sort of, you know, really make sure that you're spending your resources, your capital efficiently, and look, this is the problem. And there are enough examples of this everywhere. And I think the point we're trying to make is that ensuring that you've done that homework. Don't have to be a product manager, but do that homework in terms of really ensuring that whatever you're building is the right thing for the customer in the right order of priority. Something maybe like a must-have, something maybe like a nice-to-have. So ensuring that you're doing that diligence in terms of figuring that out.
So I think one of the things I clearly hear very loudly from all three of you is that the stake which even the developer at the lowest order has to have in the product thinking, and the stake he or she has there needs to be, you know, 2-3 notches up above than what we see today.
It has to be. The good news is they're all eager to know that, right? I mean, every single developer I talk to, if they don't know, they want to know. It's actually just a challenge for us. When you got 80 engineers working on them, how do you give all 80 of them that opportunity to interact with customers and get that feedback?
Yeah. I think let me flip the discussion to a non-tech native. Chitra, in your education space, I know that in the last 2 years, your organization has moved into adopting technology, not just the PC-based technology, even the mobile-based technology. And you as an organization coming from a non-tech vertical, you are currently struggling to build your tech product engine or the capacity in your organization. So what is your take on this whole space about talent and capacity?
So actually, I would differ a bit. I would say that the non-tech work and background that we've had in the domain is actually helping us to have a lot of product thinking. But the problem is in getting a tech into it with product thinking from that side. Because I can give you an example. I recently met a tech startup who wanted to tie up with us. They have an educational product. And that product had identified a problem, like you were stating, it's very important to identify a problem case in the school scenario. And he said, we are going to build this app that will help the school communicate the daily progress or information about the child to the parent. And then when I was talking about how are you going to do it, I realized that this technology product needed an investment of half an hour to 45 minutes every day from a teacher to communicate this. And having been in the education space for more than a decade now, I know that's the biggest problem he's going to have. No teacher is going to sit in front of the computer or work on the app to provide all the information necessary for the parents. So while they were trying to solve a problem that they had identified right, they were building a product that I felt at that point of time is going to fail because they are expecting, their expectation from one of the user is unrealistic. So one of the things that we've noticed is the domain knowledge and the aspects are very important in this product thinking. I completely agree. The keywords that I heard and take home for me today is deep thinking, customer centricity, and he was talking about holistic big picture thinking. I think these are very critical. So for us, the problem, going back to your fundamental question, is getting product thinkers to work this technology product for us. So there needs to be many conversations between the developers and people like us, and who have to create this empathy for the customer and the consumer for whom we are going to build this product. And that empathy comes from the non-tech aspect to leverage on the tech. So my urge here with developers or technology people would be to whichever domain or segment we are choosing to be in, the deep understanding of this domain, developing the customer centricity before even working on the technology product is going to be very, very important. Not just that, okay, this is my problem area, I've got a cool technology product that's going to, build all your, throw away all your problems. You have to really do a deep-rooted product thinking there. And I think the future is going to be with organizations that are going to have product thinking all pervasive in the organization. And we are working on that a big way. I think institutes like, Institute of Product Leadership, they've begun, and I think that has to be the way today. And biggest take home is while we are working with schools, we are trying to see how to bring product thinking right from primary schools, children. So bring in design thinking, product thinking into children by bringing an innovation culture. I was just sharing with them that I was appalled, and the whole thought of me starting this organization was when my kids in primary school 10 years ago would come back and say, tomorrow Friday evening 3 to 4 is my creativity class or innovation class, and that is a big myth. I mean, it has to run through the whole education system. You can't have a 40-minute period for creativity, and then where do you get product thinkers? So today we are focusing a lot on how to build this product thinking while they are learning math, while they are learning English, while they are learning all the other subjects in school. And I think in 10 years time you will have product thinking as a part of an entire organization culture. And I completely agree, you can't just have one product thinker who thinks and then passes on specs to people who will be coding something which may turn out not to be the right technology product.
I just want to add that while we're talking about many aspects of product thinking here, and for everyone out here to get there, there are actually some very simple steps, and I'll just name one. Ask. And just that simple step of asking rather than assuming, or ask your customer, ask your friend, ask your partner, ask anyone you think that is relevant to your product. I think that is the first step in getting the product thinking. It's not so difficult. It's we have a culture, and we tend to kind of go into ourselves when we try and solve a problem.
Julian, I would say it's more probed than even asked.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Because when we ask teachers, I say this, if I go and ask a teacher, what is your problem today? What would you like us to give you? She would say, give me a magic pen that can correct notebooks in a jiffy. And that's not going to solve a problem. Because asking may give very I remember, the Ford quote, Henry Ford said, if I asked the customers what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. Yeah. Because I don't think consumers can actually say what they want. I may be different here, but
that's a good point.
I think we have to probe and we have to see what the root of the problem is rather than, if I can tell you, if I go ask schools what they want, they will get a product of yesterday. And I have to do the wishful thinking of what the future is.
No, I couldn't agree with that more, right? The whole trick is to understand the problems your customer have and what is the business outcome they want to achieve, right? Without understanding that, you cannot create. Now, being in the B2B world, we can go to customers, and unlike the B2C world, right? And I keep telling my product managers, if you're sitting in your cube and writing your PRD, you're not doing your job. You have to be out meeting your customers, going into the environment, seeing how they're using the product, what are the issues, and even more so probe and find out what are the upcoming problems. 6 months from now, 12 months from now, 18 months from now, what are their top of mind priorities, right? And if you don't understand that, you cannot build a compelling product.
I think we had quite a good discussion. I think what I would do now is to basically open the floor out and open it for audience if there are any questions to any of the specific audience or generally to the whole panel, right? Questions. If you can raise your hand, I think maybe a mic will come to you or whatever. Yeah. Could we have a mic? Can you stand up and?
As the session-wise, actually, my name is Mohan. I'm in the IoT space as well as I'm passionate to solve problems in the education sector. I think that I have 2 questions for these 2 as well, and also I have one plain question on the emerging India. Everybody agrees that the middle income is rising for the Indians, and then a lot more things are happening. And as you rightly put out, okay, can I have a better solution in a school? No, there is no proper internet. Can I offer a better solution in an apartment? No, there is poor connectivity. Can I offer a better solution in a hospital? No, that is the fact. That is a fact. Yes, emerging market is happening. But I'm saying as an entrepreneur, I don't see it's a problem. This can be solved. But my question is that I won't say that do you identify any problems and give it to me. Rather, I will specifically ask that as an emerging India, as an entrepreneur, taking these infrastructure as a challenges and identifying the problem, where do you think we cannot be as a copyright, we cannot replicate a Silicon Valley model here for some of the business problems, for example, a localized, hyper-local things. Specific to the question related to that is the IoT solution that you have. Where do you see as an entrepreneur in the IoT segment, I cannot build for example, a pendant solution that you say, to create a pendant for my grandma, okay, I need a lot of investment ahead that time. Same thing, if I want a smaller solution on an IoT, a lot of hardware needs to be redesigned. The question
I think the question is specifically about how do you leapfrog that infrastructure barrier?
How do you leapfrog these problems? And I'm not saying to give a solution, but just provide your feedback for an entrepreneur to solve this.
Would anybody like to take that?
So let me try and answer specifically in the IoT space. So what we've had in the IoT space, and the reason we've had quite a few startups in this space, is a couple of reasons, I would say, actually, quite a few, 3. One is all the ecosystem players are actually offering kits now. So there are quite a few kits in the market, including Cisco's kit, for IoT, to develop on IoT. So these contain different layers in the stack from a hardware perspective. So you choose the one that you want, and you can actually include that in your particular IoT product. Now, these are very good for you to reach perhaps till your first run of products.
Okay.
They will not get you into your mass production, right? These are very good for your prototypes, they're good for your first run. But if you get to that stage and you have enough demand, then you're probably in a position to figure out how you're going to solve the production issue. Okay. And of course you can, and you'll get enough interest from all the parties in the ecosystem to solve that issue. that's on one side. The second part is, of course, funding. And the last session, I think there was a lot of discussion about how do you get access to capital. And crowdsourcing is also one option. So you have an idea. There are, in the IoT space at least, there's a lot of kits being made available by all players, Cisco, Intel, MediaTek, all of these are providing kits, so you can use those and get started really quickly. Distribution, I talked about Facebook. You can very easily reach users.
I think one of the interesting opportunities, particularly from an Indian context, is India is so heterogeneous that you can have a life in India for an extremely super expensive luxury product all the way to a extremely frugal product, right? And that lends to a very interesting scenario like Hiren was talking about. India is a great place where you can pick up any slice of the economic layer and actually craft out a variety of things, right? And then figure out how the scale will happen, right? If you show a particular success in a particular layer, that is the first step. And then from there you figure out how to scale either up or down or whichever ways, right? Maybe I would open up to the next question. Any other questions? Okay, so I have a question to ask. So I'll park my question with Chitra and others and also can contribute. So you have currently been trying to hire very specifically a product manager in your organization, which is essentially non-technical, but is embracing technology in a big way, and you actually want a technology guy to play the product role. So can you narrate your experience of how this is happening and what have you learned in this whole experimentation?
I think your question had the answer, Banu. It's as complicated as the question itself. But I think it's helped us frame our requirement pretty well. And so we've been trying to meet a lot of people with initially starting with, not very clear skill sets or a JD, but more in the role per se was clear. And it's been very difficult because you do not get a good combination of what you're talking about, high technology perspective as well as product thinking. And that's why I feel the future is in creating such product leaders, which will be the need in every organization that's trying to build a super product that is very customer centric. So it's not been very easy, but what we are also trying to see is, can we create a team and a pool of resource which can have specific skill sets. And then I think Saran was talking about how we can have one person who can do the deep thinking and see if this, I don't know whether you used the word coordination or, kind of bring these people.
Holistic layer.
Holistic layer, connecting the
dots,
layers.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say is going to be the key of, until we get to a point when product thinking becomes a more used and understood term.
I would extend that to both Saran and Hiren. You have completely different experiences of how to put together a sort of a product thinking environment in a startup environment and a large scale environment. So maybe your views on this.
So when I first started at Flipkart, right? So we didn't want only product managers to think about product, right? So we said everybody. And I found that the technology and the business guys that I made a comment, there were some really, really sharp guys there. And so I started with a very simple framework. I said that, we called it the framework of 50 whys. Meaning if somebody ever made a statement, it was perfectly okay for anybody that was on the if somebody made a statement, it was perfectly okay for on the recipient side to continuously get the why till he was completely sold on why that statement was being made, right? And this helped the engineers a lot. Because one, they were actually driving clarity on oftentimes what we found, like if you just take everything out, ultimately product management is about, do you have the clarity, right, of what you're trying to build? And what we found was somebody would just give a random requirement, but there was no real clarity, which is essentially all the depth of thinking, customer centricity, all that jazz. But essentially there was no clarity. And what I found was the only way to drive that clarity was to simplify it at its core, without trying to put any framework, anything else, like ask these 10 things, 50 whys. And it actually helped the organization, where the engineer would actually challenge the product manager, or the product manager would challenge the business guy, or the business guy would actually use that same framework with his clients. And it kind of created a very different environment in the company where people actually were at least demanding a lot, right? And that forced every single stakeholder in the company to actually be clear and to have actually done their homework well, because it looks really stupid, right? I mean, you made a statement, but you really could go like 2 levels deep on the why, and then after that, it's like, yeah, just because I'm saying so, right? And that, unfortunately, is not the right answer. So it really pushed people to actually do that depth of thinking, right? And it helped. So I would actually leave that to you guys also in different, whatever you guys are building, whether you're an engineer, product manager, business guy, whatever, right? To use this concept of the 50 whys to really be able to ensure that there is clarity on why people are saying what they're saying and why they want what they want, right? So that helped. Maybe that's something you guys can give it a shot.
Hiren?
So actually, even though we come from different end of the spectrums, I think experience in this is very, very similar. So before, I too came back about 3 years from the US. Before I came back here, all product management was based in the US because that, in a way, was our biggest market. And a lot of development and engineering was done out of Cisco India, right? In fact, for certain products, the entire software development was done in Cisco India. Now, there's a 12.5-hour difference between the product manager who knows why and what the business outcome is to the engineers building here, right? So like Saran was saying, there was one phone call, maybe at night, and you got some context, and then you went off and built. And then if you had another question, maybe you picked up the phone one more time. But that quickly got very old because the time zone differences as well as the trouble of picking up the phone. So my charter when I came here was to build the product management team for the routing and switching products out here. And we built it from scratch. I recruited a bunch of engineers who had shown some inclination towards being a product manager, who wanted to understand what the customer wanted to do, what their problems was, etc. We built that team, but that led to a lot of close interactions between the engineering team and the product management team. There were a lot of hallway conversations. There were a lot of engineers who just dropped by where the product manager was sitting and sat down with him or her and got context and asked those 50 whys, right? And when you're sitting on the same floor in the same building, those conversations were spontaneous. They happened all the time, sometimes over lunch, sometimes over coffee, sometimes in the hallway, right? And that actually has really, really helped. We've seen a difference that is made. And that's one of the main reasons why Cisco is thinking of investing more and more product managers in India right now.
So I'm conscious of the time. Thank you for being a great audience. Thank you for being a fantastic panelist team here.